Hello and welcome to the InterPlex. This past November 2024, I met with Brazilian physicist Luiz Davidovich at his FINAP office in Rio de Janeiro. This was our second meeting, and again we spoke a lot about the importance of investing in science. Davidovich is the former president of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, as well as the former Secretary General of the World Academy of Sciences. We also got into some of his personal research into quantum metrology, as well as some recent projects into bioeconomics and preservation of the Amazon. Davidovich has vast experience at the science policy interface and a lot to teach the world. The developing world can really benefit from listening to his broad perspectives and the importance of investing in science for innovation and for future economic development.
Well, thank you for having me here, Luis, in your extraordinarily beautiful office here at FINAP in Rio de Janeiro.
Well, I'm glad to participate in this conversation with you. We had one some time ago. It was a different time in Brazil. Mm-hmm. I would say much tougher for science, but now we have another time, and we are more relaxed in this sense.
Yes.
Even though it's not ideal for science, but things have become better, actually.
Well, we can start there. Why don't you give us a bit of an update on what's going on in Brazil? How has the atmosphere changed? Of course, when we did speak in 2022, it was a dark time, several years of disinvestment in science, cutting of many, very important projects. So
yeah.
What's been going on over the last couple of years?
Before it was not just a question of disinvestment, mm-hmm. but there was this anti-science position from the government, mm-hmm. which was recommending special drugs for the population, like chloroquine. Mm. And I don't think that was just a problem of Brazil. Mm-hmm. And also there was a position of the then president, against vaccines.
Right.
So I think that was the reason why many people died in Brazil during the pandemics, because they were influenced by what the president was saying. So that was a very bad time. So it's not just disinvesting. Disinvesting was a consequence of an attitude from the government, which was anti-science, clearly anti-science.
And by consequence, the populace also, who didn't respect science. Right?
That's it, mm-hmm. Okay? And that had many consequences. For instance, deforestation mm-hmm. was very important during that time. And it's interesting to see that when the government changed, deforestation went down, okay, almost immediately. Mm-hmm. Also, there is an important fund for support of science, which is called the National Fund for the Development of Science and Technology. And that fund was frozen by the previous government. There was money there. The money comes from special taxes paid by companies which work, say, for instance, with water or electricity, and the taxes, they would pay these taxes, small amounts, so as to apply that in research related to what they were doing. So the fund had money coming from these taxes, mm-hmm. but this money could not be used.
Right, it's frozen.
Now, the moment the new government was elected, actually after Lula took power, 2 months after that, this freezing was finished, mm-hmm. and now we have access to the full amount of this fund for support of science and technology, which is not just for universities, it's also for companies, industries. Mm-hmm. Part of it is subvention, which means that it's subvention for labs, in universities, for companies that do innovative things. Mm-hmm. Part of it is credit, which must be paid back with interest rates. And so it's very useful for the universities, for the research system, and it's also very useful for companies that do innovation.
Sure.
And now it's back. Now it's back.
Back in 2022, I know the federal university system was suffering greatly. So
right.
This fund is now helping to get the federal universities back on their
Partially.
feet?
Partially. We still think that, especially the federal universities, they are not in good shape. I mean, it was, after all, we had these years of disinvestment. And in order to recover from that, we need more than what is available now.
Of course.
So the universities do have problems. You know that some days ago, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro,
This is your university.
which is my university, had the electricity cut
Wow.
because they could not pay for the electricity and it was cut. So there was some negotiation and now the electricity is back. But there's no money. There's no money. So, and that's one, I think that's the biggest federal university in the country.
Yeah, so big problems. You also lost a lot of people during that time. Very
Sure.
talented young researchers, other established researchers.
That's
So
true.
The brain drain, has that recovered in any way? Have people come back, or are they gone for good, do you think?
Well, some of them I think have gone for good.
Okay.
And now the present government is trying to attract these people back to Brazil. Or another option is to stimulate collaboration between these people who are outside and people in Brazil, which is another way to profit from this diaspora
Sure.
that indeed happened in Brazil.
Because they have a bit more funding, a bit
Right.
more exposure.
But you know, it's to recover from what happened is tough. For instance, the fellowships for students, graduate students, were frozen since 2013. And then again, as when right after Lula got to be the president, there was a readjustment of these fellowships. So the situation for the students got better, but still is not enough. The correction in the fellowships did not take them back to 2013 because of inflation. You see, if you readjust for inflation,
Right, of course.
they need more. And that's very important to attract these young people to research in physics, chemistry, engineering, mathematics.
Sure.
So I think that should be a very important investment of the government. And I would say that the situation got better, but it's still not enough. And we are very much behind what's happening in other countries, like the United States, like China. Okay? And so we need a persistent investment in science, technology, innovation, which should be considered as a state program, not a government program. And the examples we have from other countries, United States, China, is that, you know, even when the government changes, some investment is still kept because universities are considered, in the United States, for instance, as a big part of the economy of the United States. Innovative companies also.
Right.
And it's clear, I think, for the United States that getting protagonism in the world, in order to have that, you need science, you need innovation. So, you know, even if you go from democratic government to Republican governments, you know, things like that happen in Brazil, I don't think they will happen in the United States. Things could change there.
Yeah.
I'm worried about health and things like that. Okay, but at least there is this consciousness that investing in science is important for the protagonism of the country. Let's see what happens now with Trump in the United States. Anyway, I'm not going to comment on that because it's not my country.
That's fine.
okay?
You have other regional influences here as
Right.
well that are
Right.
extreme enough.
Right. But you know, China is a very good example.
Sure.
You know, I remember in 1990s, the papers that were coming out of China were really not good at all. Okay. And now they are showing up in journals like Science, Nature.
Sure.
You know, so and how
They've passed the U.S. in
they passed U.S. in a number of publications. And if you look at citations, actually normalized citations, because that depends on the area of research, they are now very close to the United States. So it's not just a question of number, because number doesn't tell you the whole thing.
Sure.
But it's a question of impact of the publications.
Quality.
And in fact, I looked at the statistics of that. In fact, they're very close to the United States. That comes from this, this Larivate and things like that. They have the statistics of that. But I don't even need that because I see that nature, science, physical review letters have lots of papers by Chinese people. So we're talking about impact now.
Absolutely. I don't know if you remember, you had a powerful thing that you told me the last time we spoke. You said science is not a cost.
Sure.
It's an investment.
It's an investment.
Right.
That's
So
true. That's true. And the
great
countries
stuff.
that believe in that, they are going to be the first countries in the world in terms of power, in terms of economy, and that's it. So
yeah, it's long-term thinking, short-term thinking.
Sure,
I mean, when you talk about the students, the young people that lost their fellowships, they very well could just go into a completely different sector, and you lose that whole generation of talent.
Sure. For some time,
Yeah.
these people formed in engineering, and they're going, even in physics, they're going to work for banks and for the financial market.
Right.
Which is, I consider that to be a waste, with all deference to the financial market. But, in order to have a strong financial market, you need to have products. The financial market is an abstract thing. You deal with money. You bet on that. Instead of betting on that, I think, having products, innovative products, is much more consistent and more stable for the country, more sustainable, actually.
Absolutely.
So for a long time, the financing people had the dominance in this country, not just in the economy, but also politically.
Right.
And now there are some projects of the new government, like the new industry project, which aim to change that. If that's going to be successful or not, let's see. But I personally think that that's the right way to proceed.
Well, certainly a change for the positive, still a lot of impacts from the past. What is your present involvement? You were the former president of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences when a lot of this negative stuff was going on. That was a very difficult period. What are you doing now, personally? What are you involved in?
So, first I'm doing physics.
Yes, we'll get to that. We'll get to some of the research.
But besides doing physics, I'm also now advisor to the president of FINAP. FINAP is the main innovation agency in Brazil. It's the federal innovation agency. It is part of the Ministry of Science and Technology. And that's part of what I do today, being advisor to the president. And I find that a very challenging position. And on the other hand, I'm very happy with it. Why? Because when I was president of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, we could produce several documents with ideas about science and industry and innovation in Brazil, including ideas having to do with the main wealth in Brazil, which is in the biomes, which were being destroyed before.
Yeah, destroyed.
Destroyed before.
Terrible destruction, though.
Yeah, terrible destruction. So, and now I have the possibility of not only producing proposals, but actually helping to execute them.
Right.
Okay, and that's very challenging, but at the same time, it's very nice.
It's fulfilling.
It's fulfilling. It's fulfilling. Yeah, and I find very nice that the several proposals of the present government are aligned with the proposals of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. So when I tell them, frequently, when we have foreigners from other academies visiting here, FINAP, or sometimes we have people from the Chinese government coming here, for science and technology collaboration.
Right.
I tell them, there is no conflict of interest. I was president of the Brazilian Academy of Science. I'm now at FINAP. But what FINAP is doing is aligned with the proposals of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, and more than that, it is aligned with proposals of the present government.
That's, yeah.
So it's a very comfortable
Coherence. Yeah, there's
situation.
coherence.
And
There's
very,
open collaboration between these different entities now?
yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And, to say that it's very rewarding, actually, okay? Now, of course, executing these things is not just a task for the government, because there's a Congress too, so things have to go through the Congress. That's a difficult political negotiation, and that's outside my scope, of course. But here we are working on that, and it's interesting because it's not physics, but I think when you are in physics, you also learn how to solve problems.
It's methodology.
It's the methodology, and there are many interesting problems in Brazil that must be solved. For instance, one of the problems is the destruction of the biomes. And that's, it's amazing what happens for, like, I think the Cerrado, which is corresponding to the savanna, maybe in Africa, had more than 50% of destruction. The Pampa in the south, where there was a big inundation, a big tragedy, actually, in the last 10 years, lost 30% of its area.
Wow, in 10 years. Wow.
I mean, people who are there in these new areas, degraded areas, so with deforestation, these people work on soybeans, and in order to do that, they have these big tractors that go over the soil. They compress the soil, and by compressing the soil is now obviously impermeable. Yeah, to the water.
The water just runs off.
The water runs off. Okay, so it's not a natural phenomenon that produces inundations. You have the hands of the human beings there. Okay? And the other part of this deforestation in the south of Brazil is for cattle raising. And the cattle also compresses the soil. So, you should not just say, come on, nature is bad to the south. No, human beings are bad to the south.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, and therefore, I mean, that's one of the main things I am doing now.
I think you had mentioned that you were working on a proposal for bioeconomics.
Right.
Is that through FINAP that you're working on?
That's true.
Okay. Can you explain a bit about that and what are the biomes that you're focusing on?
Yeah. So the idea,
What's the vision? Yeah.
the idea is to, the idea is the following. You still have this deforestation in the Amazon. It's lower than before, but it's still there. Also, there's a serious problem there, which is the pollution of rivers with mercury.
Sure.
And that comes from the gold panning, illegal gold panning, and they use mercury to amalgamate the gold. And mercury goes into the water. And that's a very serious problem because that affects the fish, and the fish are eaten by human beings. So that affects human beings. Sure. In fact, a recent study showed that children from the Yanomami tribe, they have problems now in developing their IQ because of mercurium.
Yeah, it's neurodegenerative.
Yeah, because mercury in the water, in the fish they eat. So it's a dramatic problem, okay? Yeah. Now, of course, the army has gone after them, but Amazon is a huge region. Actually, if you add, Amazon is almost 50% of the Brazilian land. And if you add the Cerrado, which is the savanna, then you get about 80% of Brazil there, okay? So how to do it? And our idea, which has, there was a publication of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences in 2008. And in that publication, we had a proposal that the best way to have a sustainable development of the Amazon region is to offer an option to deforestation and gold panning, which is a profitable option, which should include the communities, the local communities, because if you don't do that, these people will keep doing gold panning and cutting trees because they need money for eating, okay? So the idea is to have biotechnology in the Amazon region so that you can profit from the biodiversity in the Amazon. Now, some people have suggested, taking the biodiversity and analyze it in labs in Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo. I don't think that works. The labs should be in the Amazon region, and they should involve local communities in that, in collecting the biodiversity, teaching them, and first learning from them how to identify the biodiversity, and eventually teaching them also how that could be used for drugs.
What for drugs? We're talking biotechnology for pharmaceuticals, especially.
Yeah, right.
Any other kind of products that you're thinking of in this proposal, or that's the one that has the most profitability, the most possibility of investment?
Yeah, there are other possibilities. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they are being considered in Brazil, but I know they'll be considered in Africa, for instance. That's one of the projects which is
with TWAS.
Put by TWAS, and there are some plants you can use biomass to produce. It's amazing. There's some electrodes for energy reservoirs, kinds of batteries, things like that. Okay, so that's another use of biomass. Which they're doing that. So there is a lot. There are lots of possibilities.
Sure.
Using that for the pharmaceutical industry is maybe the one which is more direct now. Okay, so we can. There's a way. There's a very definite path to do that. But once you start doing that, you start exploring the biodiversity. You start to listen to people there, and also to have them learn about this industrial process. I think it's important to do that, to increase their competence also, to help to educate them and be educated by them, because they know a lot about the biodiversity.
Right.
So I think the first application would be to drugs, actual pharmaceutical industry, but other possibilities would show up, I think. Okay, so
some of these other non-timber forest products, the knowledge that the communities have, fruits and other seeds and things like this, also actually part of the idea.
Yeah, that's already in place.
Yeah.
For instance, acai, which is very well known in the United States.
One example.
The culture of acai employs about 300,000 people in the Amazon.
Here in Brazil? Or
in Brazil.
In Brazil.
Just collecting it. Okay. And then they make this, how do you call, pasta, paste of acai, and they export that, especially to the United States. The United States is a big buyer of that. And then in the United States, they aggregate value to produce perfumes, oils, and things like that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I think we should do that here.
That's an example of bioeconomics, and
I think we should do that here.
Finding the way to get the communities more directly involved in these things too.
Right.
That maybe going back, just since you mentioned some of the gold, this is something that I've researched a bit, and it's even worse than you describe it, because you have these migratory fish species, and they're the predatory ones, and it bioaccumulates, and they're the ones that are consumed. So those will be going up into the Andes, where there's also a lot of illegal gold mining, coming back to the Amazon. But the sediments, the buildup of the sediments, the heavy metals being transported down from the Andes into the lower Amazon, it's there, and they're deposited in the floodplains. That's going to be there for countless generations. It's a big problem.
It's a big problem. So I think there are scientists in Brazil dealing with that, people from chemistry, thinking about this. Okay? And what you mentioned is brings to another point, which I think is important, and we have been reinforcing this point. Sustainable development of the Amazon is not possible if you just think of Brazil alone.
Exactly.
So collaboration with the Amazonic countries is very important. Okay? And we are also trying to push in that direction. So that involves other sectors of the government. That involves the Ministry of Foreign Relations, for instance. And we have been talking about that.
Sure. Yeah, it's impossible without it being some kind of transboundary policy.
So
collaboration.
And you ask, what can I do as former president of the Brazilian Academy of Science? Well, what I do, and I have done while I did that while I was president of the Brazilian Academy of Science, is just talk. I give talks in several places of Brazil, and I keep talking about this. So it's the thing that soft water in hard stone
Okay. Yes.
eventually works
Okay, yeah.
if you keep insisting on that. Okay? So that's the idea.
Create more consciousness.
More
inform
consciousness about that.
policy.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we find that stopping deforestation is a police problem because it's illegal. But it's not just that. I mean, I think this has to do with science, innovation, and I think that's a great opportunity for Brazil, because there are other themes in Brazil which are themes looking at the future. That's universal. New biological progresses of CRISPR and other things like that. Brazil should have that because some drugs are extremely expensive in Brazil, and we should be able to be competent on that.
Self-sufficient.
Yeah, we should have stronger research on vaccines, and the pandemics showed that to us. You see, the problem is that other countries do this research, of course. They have the vaccines, but then, of course, they use the vaccines first before exporting them or sending them to other countries. So we got the vaccines, but the countries who produce the vaccines got them first.
Yeah.
And that means sometimes hundreds of thousands of people dead.
Yeah, you want to be prepared for what might
So
come next.
we need that. But we should also look at endeavors that are typical of Brazil. And that for that, Brazil could have the international protagonism because it's involved with things we have and the other countries don't.
Like the biomes.
Like
the
biomes.
biodiversity.
Okay? So I think biomes is a natural choice for having a new industry in Brazil, having research prioritized in Brazil, and it's a very important point. And the other point, of course, is the energy transition, which again, Brazil is especially good at that. We have one of the cleanest energies in the world, but we should work on that. We could do more on that. For instance,
Innovate.
sun energy, very important. There's lots of sun in Brazil, and but then we need these solar plates, and Brazil is not producing them.
Right.
So, things like that
To be more
should be adjusted.
self-sufficient.
Of course, if you have a country if you have a president which is anti-science, then it's difficult to go ahead. But if that's not the case, that makes it easy. But it's not extremely easy because then, of course, there's the Congress, it has to approve the budget. There are several other problems in Brazil. The difference in salaries here is extremely high.
Right.
Some people are getting too much, other people are getting too little. So, and these are things which are very difficult to negotiate in the Congress.
You mentioned some of
But
those.
they must be negotiated because the central government needs more money. And so that's a big problem.
Yes. You had mentioned the Yanomami. I recall you telling me about your time as the president of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. You were the first to include an indigenous leader within the Academy of Sciences. Can you explain a bit about the motivation and who that was and how that opened up some of the doors for more intercultural collaboration around science?
Sure. So, very nice question. We have two classes of members of the Brazilian Academy of Science. There are the members that come from the academy, from labs, research institutes, something like that. And there is another class which we call collaborative members, people who do not necessarily work on scientific papers or innovations in industries, but they are people who do things that are good for science in Brazil, help science in Brazil in one way or another. And then when I was president, there was this proposal of electing Davi Kopenawa, who is the leader of Yanomamis, to elect him as a collaborative member of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. And
The first.
the first. And there were other collaborative members before, but not from from indigenous people.
Right.
Like there was a guy who was a very, very nice person. He was president of one of the main Brazilian agencies for the universities. He did some very fundamental things there, initiated some new processes and things like that. So he became a collaborative member of the Brazilian Academy of Science. You know, some examples are very few.
Mm-hmm.
And then the name of Davi Copenau was proposed for election, and I was very happy that by far most of the members of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences voted for him. And by far means what? 90%, even more.
That's great.
Okay. So then Davi Copenau was there in the interior of the Amazon. And his Portuguese is not very good. He still can speak Portuguese, but he's not very good. But, you know, he was very happy about that. Mm-hmm. His son was speaking throughout the Amazon, you know. Mm-hmm. My father was elected to the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. And that's interesting because for them, first, you know, they happen to know about the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. Yeah. Second, they realize that their knowledge is recognized by the Brazilian Academy of Science. And, you know, I had initially it was tough because I had to clarify to people that science and knowledge is not the same thing. Mm-hmm. When you talk science, you immediately think about scientific methods. Mm-hmm. In physics, there are the methods by Galileo, Galilei, and verification and things like that. Mm-hmm. In biology, you also do clinical essays and things like that, see if some substance works or not. So that's science. But then there is knowledge. And we should not ignore knowledge. Knowledge is part of the culture, and knowledge can help science. And these guys, the Yanomami Indians, indigenous people, and Davi Copenau as a special case, they have an amazing knowledge about the biology of the Amazon.
Right, which is empirical. It might not be the Western scientific method, but it's a form of empirical
It is empirical.
Evidence.
They use the biodiversity actually to cure illness.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, Davi Copenau wrote a book, mm-hmm. which is available in Portuguese, English, and French, with the help of a guy who is a scientist, actually, mm-hmm. anthropologist.
Okay.
And he lived with the Yanomami for 20 years. He's a French anthropologist. Mm-hmm. And he helped Davi Copenau to write that book, because Davi Copenau could write the book in indigenous language, mm-hmm. but not in Portuguese. Sure. Anyway. So he helped him to write in this sense. Mm-hmm. And the book is amazing. It is called The Fall of the Sky. And it's available at Amazon.com.
Okay.
The Fall of the Sky. And the Fall of the Sky is a myth mm-hmm. of these indigenous people. I don't know how old is this myth, but they say that, you know, if the sky is kept above by the taller trees of the forest, if you cut these trees, the sky falls on the earth, and it falls especially on the rivers, and the water from the rivers goes to the center of the earth, so the rivers dry out. Mm-hmm. That's amazing, because people are talking about that now. Yeah. Science is talking about that now. Of course, it's not talking about the fall of the sky, mm-hmm. but you know, when you see this huge rain, right. these hurricanes mm-hmm. that come as a consequence of climate change, this is sort of the fall of the sky.
It's a metaphor. It's a strong metaphor that represents their understanding of the interconnections between different Earth systems.
That's it. Okay. And the drying out of the rivers, that's what is happening in Amazon now. Mm-hmm. Okay. There are rivers that cannot be crossed anymore by boats because they have dried out. Big rivers. Okay. So that's knowledge. Mm-hmm. And that's knowledge from people who have lived there in the forest for years and years, for hundreds of years.
Absolutely.
And that's amazing.
Do you think, as, let's say, Western scientists, there's this opening, more of a, let's say, consciousness to broaden the word science to include knowledge systems such as traditional people that are empirical, not necessarily like just metaphorical, but empirical, things that can be verified due to a better understanding of systems, I suppose.
I don't know.
Possibility?
I don't know. I don't know how this is going to proceed.
Yeah.
You know, right now, what I try to convince people is that knowledge from the indigenous people should be considered and should be respected,
Right.
even though they don't use the so-called scientific method. Okay, so and for me, if that becomes true, it's irrelevant for me if knowledge is considered to be science or not.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
so as long as that is seriously considered,
Right.
and as long as these people is actually invited to teach us something they know.
Right.
And actually, you know, in the Amazon, that was happening, sometimes in an illegal way. People from other countries would come to the interior of Amazon and would talk with the Indians, you know, with interpreters, to know about interesting plants in the Amazon. And they would take them away.
And they would then exploit them,
They would
take all the benefit, and
Right.
leave them.
That's it. So, you know, come
Yeah,
on.
I've
I
seen
mean,
it many
so
times.
people from industry,
Yeah.
they consider that that's a kind of science.
Sure.
And we scientists, you know,
Yeah. Hands off.
we don't.
Yeah, at some point it can be considered semantical, I suppose. It's about the word science, but it's more about, at least from my side and some of the work doing, what are the bridges that help to form a dialogue? So whether it's evidence, if we don't want to call it scientists, or knowledge
Right.
systems, or a broader view of what science is, that allows these conversations that exchange knowledge,
Sure.
develop projects, and allow just a betterment of humanity and preservation of biomes. So
Sure.
I think that's what we're talking about. It just depends on the wording.
Sure.
Words are important for how. So when I hear that, like, the son of David Kopenauer was so excited to be included in the Brazilian Academy of Sciences,
Yes.
because that word was powerful for them to
Sure.
be like, our knowledge is being respected as maybe a kind of science, or at least
Right.
it's being respected by scientists.
Right,
So
right.
there's more mutual respect there, so there can be an exchange of knowledge
That's true.
over
That's it.
time. So that's part of why I asked that question, because it's part of the sort of the objectives of some of what these
Sure.
projects that I'm working on are
Sure.
about. So it's great that these doors are being opened.
Sure. And also, you know, if you start paying attention to what they say, there are other sectors, other areas of research and knowledge of the what they call white civilization that could be impacted. For instance, David Kopenauer, I told the story once in a meeting of psychoanalysts. In an interview, David Kopenauer says the following, you know, you white civilization, you know, your dreams are very strange. You know? Because, you know, you always dream about yourselves. While, you know, we dream about the forest, about the animals.
Right.
Now, what about the traditional psychoanalysis, you know, that explores dreams? And so I think, you know, we should have a broader vision, and that could help many areas of knowledge of the human civilization.
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to mind for me working with Indigenous people for a while is that they universally really view themselves as part of nature, where Western society is separate or,
Sure.
or dominant in the worst
Right.
cases of
Right.
nature. So that then gets deep in the psyche. They grow up knowing that they're part of nature, and they see might call them spirits or something that seems metaphysical,
Right.
but they're actually seen as persons. The tree is a person, the jaguar is a
Right.
person, so they dream of these things as like other people.
Yes.
So it's quite interesting.
And I would like to insist on another point related to that, just to make sure that people understand the seriousness with which we consider that fact that he was elected to the Brazilian Academy of Sciences. We have annual meetings. And the annual meeting, when he was when he went into the academy. He could not come because he was in the interior of the forest. But he recorded a video saying that he was very happy with that.
That's great.
And furthermore, in the opening of the annual meeting, so I had this video shown. It was the time of the pandemics. So the meeting was a virtual meeting. So I had this video being shown, but before that, there was another video, which is a movie which was made by Davi Kopenawa and a movie director from the south of Brazil,
Okay.
which is called The Last Forest. It's an amazing movie which shows the daily life of the Yanomamis.
Beautiful.
And it's maybe a 1 hour movie. And then I negotiated with the director to show that movie in the opening of the annual meeting. And the only thing that we had to restrict the attendance to maybe 200 people, something like that, because that movie was not in the market yet. And that was shown in the opening of the
building bridges. It's really
building bridges. Building bridges, yes, because when we consider this international action of the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, other academies as well, it helps to bridge to build bridges between people, even people from countries in war. But then sometimes we forget to build bridges with people in Brazil, right? And so this helps in that direction.
You need people like you to notice these different scales of connections.
Not just me. I mean, as I mentioned, 90% of the members of the Brazilian Academy supported that. So.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit, and I'd like to talk some about your research as a physicist. First of all, I remember talking to you in 2022 that a lot of your projects were also defunded, and it was a difficult time. How are things now? Have you been able to do more research here in Brazil over the last couple of years?
Yeah. Actually, now we have, as I mentioned before, this National Fund for Support of Science and Technology was unfrozen.
Unfrozen, very important.
Okay, was unfrozen.
Released.
So the money is available now.
Yeah.
There is a new call for this Brazilian Virtual Institutes for Science and Technology. This is a big initiative in Brazil. There are, I think, about 200 institutes like that. There is one on quantum information. I am vice coordinator of that institute. And these institutes do not have a headquarters because they are virtual. And there are about 120 PIs, principal investigators, participating in this institute now. It's going to finish now. So the government now has a new call for these National Institutes for Science and Technology. Okay. So that's a very interesting initiative because, it's not support for one individual or just one scientific group. It's a support that requires that people from different groups interact with each other.
It's very important. So
our National Institute for Science and Technology and Quantum Information is present in whole regions of Brazil. There are I don't know how many states, and it's amazing. So, and now we have this new call.
It's a very different atmosphere now than last time we spoke. So.
It's a very different atmosphere. We still have to get more of that. There is an economic problem now, which has many roots to it. And now we're putting pressure on the government so that it does not freeze part of the money of this National Fund for Science and Technology. I don't know if we're going to win this battle, but we are putting lots of effort. There are documents from the Brazilian Academy of Science, the Brazilian Society for the Advancement of Science, and other societies, just stating to the President of Brazil, directly to the President, they send this to the President, stating that, this cannot be done. That's extremely important for the Brazilian development. And if you look at it's a very simple calculation. If you look at the money available for this fund, it corresponds to 0.1% of the Brazilian national gross product. 0.1%. That's nothing.
For science.
So are you going to cut that or part of that? Ridiculous. You know?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the economic system in Brazil is a complex one. Brazil is spending a big part of the budget in paying interest rates for people who have titles of the Brazilian treasury. The interest rate now is about 13%. It's one of the highest in the world. And of course, we would like very much to have some conversations about that with the government. And, there are problems already. The Congress, the people in the Congress that came from the Bolsonaro times, who led them parts of the money of the budget, a big part actually. Each guy can have part of this money to send to, to their own state, to strengthen their position for the next election. And which is okay for them to have some money, but they have a big part of the budget. And that's something that is done, for each guy from the parliament has the money goes to some project, but there is no national project involved in that. So that really destroys the notion of having a national project for the country. So, each one think about their electorate, and that does not build a country.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so it's a big problem.
Right.
And that's one which Lula has to cope.
Well,
he's a kind of magician in terms of negotiations.
You mentioned that to me before, so let's hope.
He has gone through several difficult negotiations, and I hope he can do something about it. Right now, the situation is very complex.
Well, more specifically about the research, because you were recently telling me about a project you're working on in quantum metrology.
Right.
Can you maybe explain that a bit? Because you were beginning to get some data from that.
Right.
If you can share that.
Right. Yeah, this is actually part of a long-term research. That I would say started with my PhD thesis. In my PhD thesis, I was looking at the dynamics.
Just a few years ago.
A few years ago. Yeah, I'm a young guy,
Yeah.
So there I studied the dynamics of an excited atom, which is decaying and releasing photons in the environment. How does that change with time? How do you describe the dynamics of that process? And that was an example of a quantum system interacting with the environment. And I think that followed me through my career as a physicist. I have been very interested in understanding the dynamics of quantum systems interacting with the environment. There are several reasons for that. One of them is that the environment is always there. So systems that do not interact with the environment, they do not exist. Of course, you can approximate with very low temperatures, you can approximate this system interacting with the environment as a pure system, but it's an approximation. So mostly we have systems interacting with the environment. So I focus on that. So that was one of the reasons. That's the real thing. But the other reason is more subtle. Is the understanding how the classical world shows up with this quantum ingredient on the basis of it. How can the classical world emerge from quantum physics? Which I think is a very basic problem. And now we know that a big part of this question is answered if you consider the role of the environment. The environment transforms quantum systems into classical systems.
When you talk about the environment, things like temperature, anything.
The things around us at this moment, the molecules of air which are colliding with us, and that's it. That's the environment. And it is because of this environment that you as a whole and me, we behave as classical systems, right? We are localized. We are now in superpositions which are allowed by quantum physics. Me here and there. That doesn't exist in the classical world. And the reason for that is the environment. We can show that these so-called quantum superpositions that allow, for instance, an atom to be in a position which is not precisely known. So it could be in any place in some region of space. In the classical world, these positions are determined by the environment. The molecules of R colliding with us localize us. Okay? And the study of this process has followed me around my career. There are several interesting effects that can be considered. And in fact, I was very happy to work along this trajectory with an experimental group in France, in Paris, at École Normale Supérieure. Now they are at Collège de France. The leader of that group is Serge Haroche, who got the Nobel Prize in 2012.
Okay.
And we had a very strong collaboration. For me, it was great. I learned a lot about it. And some of the experiments there deal precisely with that. There was an experiment related to the famous Schrödinger cat paradox, showing that an electromagnetic field in a cavity, which is produced in a superposition of two fields that could approximately be considered as classical fields, each one, but there is a quantum superposition of them. That quantum superposition is quickly destroyed by the environment. The fact that the cavity is not perfect. There is dissipation.
Okay.
And that destroys the superposition much before the field decays. Because it's an open cavity, so the field will go away. But before the field decays, the superposition goes away. So that gives an indication of why the classical world emerges from the quantum substract.
Fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I worked on that. I worked on the theoretical proposal of that experiment. We worked together there in Paris with several other things. There was a theoretical proposal also on quantum teleportation that was not related to this environment thing, but it was related to a fundamental property of quantum physics. I was very interested in that. So quantum
entanglement, that's why?
Yeah, it's related to entanglement. Quantum teleportation was proposed by a group of people, including Charles Bennett and other very good people, Asha Paris and very good people, in a physical review letters paper. And then I started to think about, how to implement that experimentally. And there was this proposal. Okay, and I collaborated with people in the college, in the École Normale Supérieure on that, also a Brazilian colleague of mine, Isim Zaguri. And we produced a paper, which was, I think, the first proposal of some experiment that could be done. And that paper used some interactions, which later on were considered for quantum computers. These are called gates. And we had to use some gates in order to have quantum teleportation. And then actually Charles Bennett, in a diffusion paper in Physics Today, mentioned that paper as the first paper that brought the idea of a gate, quantum gate. So, and that was fun,
Sure.
wonderful time, showing how theory and experiment were very much related. And
This is after your work in Paris, after your work in France.
no, actually, this teleportation I did there in France.
That's when you were there. Okay.
Paper teleportation. They are participating also, co-authors in the paper.
Great.
So, and then there were many papers. I think I had from 15 to 20 papers with them. But that of course brings some ideas to Brazil, because to things to do in Brazil, because I saw how important it was to have theory close to experiments. It's very, it's impossible to characterize people like Serge Haroche or Claude Cointeroudi, who also got the Nobel Prize there. He's in the same lab, years before SET. He was the advisor of SET, his advisor of SET.
It's a pretty good,
Yeah,
pretty good group.
yeah, very good group. So it's very difficult to say, Claude Coentin-Routy was a theoretician or an experimentalist. He was both.
Okay.
And that contributed to the quality of the physics they were doing. So I came to Brazil with this idea that we should have that too. And then there was an opportunity that was called the Millennium Institute, an initiative of the federal government. And we got one of the projects. And with that, we could start building a lab at the Catholic University in Rio de Janeiro. And also we got to hire some very good experimentalists, not just in the Catholic University, but also at the Federal University. Then in '94, I moved to the Federal University. There was a whole group that moved there. And so we could hire some very good experimentalists. And they actually built a very nice lab in quantum optics, which later on became also a lab on quantum information. And the lab is now at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. It is there, and it's doing experiments on that.
This is where you do most of your work now, at that lab.
That's, I do several,
Your research.
yeah, my research now there at the Federal University is now related to this lab.
I see. Okay.
We wrote a paper with Rui Matos Filho, a good friend and collaborator of mine there. Was published, I think, this year. And the experiment is now being done, and the results are out based on that paper.
You had explained it to me before. Can you maybe explain again the experiment?
Well, it's, the idea, which is not just in that paper, but in also other papers that I did in collaboration with people in the United States, was to look at the effect. So these are papers on quantum metrology. What's quantum metrology? Is to estimate the value of some parameters, which could be, say, the gravitational field at the surface of the Earth. It could be the time duration of some event, or it could be the phase acquired by some quantum system during some dynamical evolution. Or it could be also the estimation of the absorption of some system.
Okay.
And that's interesting because if you look at the estimation of the absorption, you are necessarily talking about the environment. Because the environment should be there in order to have some absorption. So that connects me with my old thing, which is the dynamics of systems interact with the environment.
Right.
Okay. So we had some paper on estimation of the absorption of some system. That paper was done in collaboration with Girish Agarwal at the University of Texas. Rui Matos Filho participated in that too. And we showed how quantum effects, including entanglements, could help to estimate the precision with, much better than classical means would allow. Okay? Now, why do you want to do that? Well, suppose another way of increased estimation is to increase the intensity of light that goes through a sample. But if you are dealing with a biological sample, you don't want to increase the intensity too much because the sample might die or might be burned. So we need a weak intensity. And with weak intensity, quantum mechanics helps. So the idea is to estimate the absorption, very high precision, so that you have a better understanding of, say, biological samples. Okay, so that would be an application.
So you tested this with cells, correct?
Not yet.
Yeah, but that's
that's just the theory, and we published that last year. And we did other things also about the estimation of temperature, which is also interaction with the environment. You need the environment in order to have temperature. So we did some papers on that. So we have done lots of work on that, quantum metrology of open systems. Open because they are interaction with the environment. Now this experiment now has to do with what we call depolarization. So when we emit photons, they may be polarized. In other words, the electric field associated with them vibrates in some specific direction, say. Then that's polarization, okay? You can check for polarization with some Polaroid material, and then if the field is polarized, you rotate the Polaroid like that, and the intensity of the light transmitted changes. Okay? If the Polaroid is in the correct direction, all the intensity goes through. If the Polaroid is a perfect one, if it is in the other position, 90 degrees position, then the light doesn't go through. Okay, so that's polarization, that's Polaroid. So now we want to investigate the depolarization, some medium that could change the polarization of some photon, say, and depolarize it so that the polarization becomes random. And we have done some theory on that. There are some very interesting effects that come up. And now this is being tested experimentally. Okay.
These are the
in the lab at the Federal University.
Okay.
And the results are very nice.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Must be exciting after
It is
such a
very exciting.
long-term process to get to that point.
It is very exciting, right? It's very exciting to have this, of course. Some of the things we predicted have been realized in labs outside Brazil, especially in France. But having that in Brazil is great. We have done other things in quantum metrology in Brazil in the lab before. And very interesting things I find. And it was a collaboration between theory and experiment also. And things like using quantum physics to estimate the small rotation of a mirror. There are some applications of that. I let people imagine what kind of applications that could be. Small motion of a mirror. You can detect this motion very precisely using quantum physics.
Okay, so this is your work on quantum optics.
Yeah, we did a theoretical paper on that, and that contained some experiments showing this increase in the precision beyond the classical limit. Physics for me is fun. It's fun. It's fun. And it's a hobby, if you want. It's when people talk to me, oh, so you are a professional physicist, I find that strange. What do you mean by profession? For me, it's a hobby.
That's nice.
That's my hobby.
It's a nice way to think of it.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's my hobby. And the other things I do, like which were mentioned before, making proposals for the biomes, for biotechnology, things like that, that's not a hobby.
That's your job.
That's a job, it's more than that. I would say it's an ethical imposition.
Yes.
It's an ethical imposition. I'm not saying that everybody should do that. Maybe that's a problem I have because the way I was educated was to think about humanity and that solidarity was more important than greedy. I was educated like that by my parents. So
I wish more people were.
So if I'm not in finances or I'm not a millionaire, you should blame my parents,
I think it's good for everybody that you're not.
You should blame my parents. But anyway, that's what I like to do, and I feel comfortable with that, doing physics. And I should say that these other things make less physics, of course, because I spend time doing these other things. In FINAP, I'm working on several things, and of course, that takes time from physics.
But you're also supporting other scientists.
I'm support other things. So the question, which sometimes is difficult to balance, is that it's how to balance these two things, and this does not come with a loss of tranquility. Sometimes it comes with anxiety, and
Can you imagine?
so, but it's part of the game. It's part of the game. Yeah.
There's one that you mentioned, quantum computing. Does Brazil have a research group or a laboratory devoted to quantum computing? And more generally, do you see that as a very important emerging technology?
Okay. Now, in Brazil, there are some people working on software for quantum computing.
Okay.
Having hardware here is difficult under the present economic situation.
Right, that's what I...
It's very expensive.
Sure.
And it needs very good engineers, not physicists. The physics of that is well known. But the engineering is very tough. Okay? So, Google imported a very good engineer from Germany in order to build the quantum computer. So it's tough. It's tough. And that explains why you don't see many quantum computers spread all over the world. So the United States has some companies. Europe also has some. And China now has one with 72 qubits, which is not too much.
Right.
But they're even let the odd people from other countries use that. Okay? And some people here in Brazil use actually computers from abroad. They have to pay for that. You have to pay for that. Right now it's not cheap, it's expensive. Computers in Canada, for instance, or the United States, they can be used from people from Brazil. But people pay for that. People pay for that.
Do you, as somebody, knowledgeable, very knowledgeable on the subject, do you have a guess at a timeline for when quantum computing might become more generally available, more dominant in the information sector?
I don't have a guess. And I think that people who have a guess, they are usually wrong. And in fact, if the guess takes, there is a way, if you do a guess for, say, 20 years from now, that's very comfortable, because when the 20 years from now come, people have forgotten that they made a guess. If it doesn't work 20 years from now, people forget that. Oh, come on, that guy said that 20 years it will. People forget, so they will not blame you for doing wrong predictions.
It's a very fair answer.
Yeah,
Just ask, because you so much speculation around these things. But
there is lots of speculations, of course. Part of it is marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't like that, because that interferes with scientific estimations and things like that. So that should be a serious estimation, and we should tell the public the truth. That's an ethical thing that we should have. So if we're not sure about how quantum computer will work, or whether it will be actually benefic, if it will be possible, because there are several problems there. One of them is the environment that destroys entanglement. And then as you increase the number of qubits, this becomes more and more tough. Okay, so you have to do it at low temperatures and things like that.
This is something you've worked on, theoretically, at least? The environment and the breakdown of entanglement.
Sure, because we have worked on that, even experimentally, on the role of entanglement on entangled states. Actually, we did some experiment here in Brazil, which became famous, actually. It was published in Science.
Okay.
The title was Entanglement Sudden Death, showing that entanglement could die before coherence between the parts dies. So it's a very fragile quantity. And we did some experiment on that, showing that indeed it could decay very fast. Okay? So it's part of it is that. The other part is the following, that affects supercomputation now, is the need for energy.
Right.
And I think people who are working with artificial intelligence, in Google, in IBM, they know about that, because it's, the amount of energy you need to keep all this data bank, because artificial intelligence, at least at the moment, is big data and statistics. That's it.
Do you think it will integrate with quantum computing in the future, artificial intelligence?
It could, if they can solve this problem with quantum computing, which is the coherence and the role of the environment. Okay, it could, of course, because quantum computer could do this in a more efficient way. But there's a possibility. But you cannot say. I don't think you can say that quantum computer will work at the end. because of these possibilities. But I find very nice that people are trying, should try, and you learn other things along the way. Okay?
Big challenges.
Big challenges, big challenges. And the energy thing is very complex, you know.
Well, these companies are starting to, which is something I've been curious about for a while, they're starting to use more nuclear power.
That's true.
They're investing more in small modular nuclear reactors, which is interesting for their data system, data processing.
That's true.
What do you think about that? It's good.
Well, you know.
I like it, by the way. But
I think it's okay. Yeah. I think it's okay. And
but it's a
artificial.
lot. It needs a lot of energy, though. So.
It needs lots of energy. And also, you know, I guess he needs some new ideas about artificial intelligence. And I'm not saying that because I think like that, because I have seen also news about that.
Yeah.
That somehow artificial intelligence has, developed very quickly first. And now it's getting to a point where it's more difficult to develop.
The next step.
You can enlarge your data banks as much as you can. Mm-hmm. But at some moment, first there are restrictions. First, you cannot, more and more you cannot use material that was published by the regular press. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's, that should be paid for. Mm-hmm. And the regular press is putting pressure on the people of artificial intelligence about that. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's proprietary thing, and it's and so that's one of the problems. And so they must extend the data bank, which is already huge. They must have new ideas because at some point they will know about everything which was written in the world. But then what? And there are some things that they cannot do. I mean, and they need maybe many more steps, many more individual qubits and interactions between them, to get to what the human brain can do now, because you can create new theories. Mm-hmm. Demonstration of theorems is something different.
Sure.
Okay, that's easier to do.
These other things are derivative in some way, where the brain can.
But creating something like the theory of relativity,
right? Well,
quantum physics. The artificial intelligence does not have this ability yet. Okay, now will it have some time? I don't know. It's a long process because the number of neurons, we have billions of neurons with non-linear connections between them, and these connections can be changed.
Yeah,
they change the connections.
Right.
So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, and I don't think that that creating new theories, creating the theory of relativity or quantum physics, is something that was sky-given. Mm-hmm. Not to say some other thing, but sky-given. I think it's a product of the human brain.
So we're talking about general artificial intelligence getting to that point.
Yeah. So can that be done by the intelligence artificial, as it is now? I don't think so. It cannot. Mm-hmm. In the future, maybe, but it will be tough. It will be tough because it's not a question of millions of qubits. Mm-hmm. We have billions of neurons, and also have these connections which which change. And maybe, but when will that be done? I don't know. And when that is done, what will happen to humanity in general? And then ethical problems come up, of course. If you have some countries that are more powerful than the others, and if by chance, just imagination, that in some countries, some authoritarian guys are elected, for instance, and they decide to change the system, and then decide to have the control of the artificial intelligence of that country. Can you imagine what could happen?
That's big.
So it's
big issues.
At the moment, it's scientific fiction.
Yeah.
But, that could happen sometime in the future. But, having billions of qubits, maybe somebody has a new idea. Instead of just increasing this, I
have a couple of interrelated questions that I'm having trouble figuring out how to ask it. And I know you got to go, so I'll let this be the last one. It gets okay. So first of all, when talking about some of these things with quantum entanglement and some of the more speculative but big picture or big question type of things, do you think there's any involvement of these kinds of fundamental or foundational properties with the emergence of things like consciousness? Because we're talking about general artificial intelligence. Do you have any thoughts on that? That there's a relation?
Well, some thoughts, but not deep thoughts on that. I think consciousness is a product of complexity. And it's, indeed, the human brain is one of the most complex systems that exist in nature. Of course, there are also the brains of animals, and they have consciousness too. So it's again, I think it's arrogant to talk about human consciousness because consciousness, part of it is a product of evolution. I mean, if animals are not afraid of dying, they'll die. They will not show up along the succession of births, and they will die. So being afraid of dying is part of the evolution, Darwinian evolution. Right? And that can be more complex because Freud would say that the question of death was an extremely important question for human beings. I would say for animals as well. It's Darwin, otherwise they will not be around. So I think it's a product of the complexity of the brain, of animals, and of human beings as well. Of human beings, of course, is much more evolved than with animals because it's not just the fear of death, but it's also there are also other things, which includes questions about relationships with the others, questions about who you are, philosophical thinking, and things like that. So it's more evolved. But, is it substantially different from what happens with animals, with monkeys, for instance, or even with dogs? And is it substantially different? Well, it's very different, of course, because the complexity is higher. But I think there's some relation between them.
Of course. But the question about does it involve anything with quantum states or quantum entanglement, is that anything you've speculated?
Yeah, or you see, people think that was a discussion in literature, but people think that entanglement does not have a role in the human brain. Okay? Of course, there is sort of entanglement in the atom, in the composition of atoms between electrons and things like that, okay? Because we have atoms here. But entanglement between different sectors of the brain, people don't believe in that because of the noise in the brain. Sparkling between neurons, which would destroy any quantum.
So that's the environment.
Any quantum subtle property.
That's really my question. So that's the environment that then breaks down.
That's the internal environment because their neurons they have sparks and that's noisy. That's noisy. So I don't think entanglement has a role in this respect. Now, there is discussion in the literature yet on that. There was an interesting paper a very old paper by Hepp, Lieben Hepp, I think. Hepp was a great guy in quantum physics, and I think he's still alive. So. And Lieb also is a very good guy in statistical physics. And they had this paper about, I think it was published in Nature, on precisely this noisy character of the brain. And that's because some people, including Penrose, mentioned the possibility that quantum mechanics could be very important in the brain, and they said not. Well, even today there is some discussion on that, but I find it difficult to have this quantum, these fragile quantum properties in the brain. They are, of course, in the atoms that make part of the brain or make part of our skin or whatever, stable. But except for that entanglement between different parts of the brain, I think it's...
To emerge some property like consciousness, probably.
I think it's tough.
Many people misappropriate the kind of work that you do and the kind of things that we're talking about in a way that I would say is anti-scientific or pseudoscientific. we talk a lot about misinformation propagated by populist or far-right governments. But there's also the other side of things, and I encounter this far too much because a lot of the work I do with Indigenous people and things like this, I get approached by people that are more in this, let's say, kind of new age realm. And they talk about this kind of nonsense of applying quantum entanglement to this or teleportation and all of these things. And they use the kind of work that people like you do that's real fundamental science. And whether it's for marketing, whether they really believe it, but it's another kind of anti-science. And I wonder how bothered you get by things like this, because it's another kind of misinformation that really needs to be fought against. Because it's like that for me usually goes more towards the progressive side of things, and it's difficult. It's difficult to deal with.
That's true, and I would say that it's not just the fault of the people who produce this misinformation or who believe in that.
Yeah,
it is also the fault of scientists, because we should give more talks more than that. I think quantum physics should be explained not even in high school. Let's say even before high school, to students, and it's possible to do that. It does not involve just differential equations and things like that. You don't need that. You can talk about bits that they know because everybody is using computers and so forth, and then use qubits, and you can do quantum physics with qubits without any differential equation. Okay, it's possible to do that. That's not the full story, but it helps people to understand what is in there. Okay? So I think it's a question of education. Okay? Of course, there is also some psychological thing that people like to believe in those things because they take them from the sometimes a boring daily life. Okay? They project some idea of the universe which for them, say, more beautiful than what they see around. Okay? So that's part of the psychological part. There's another part of it which is more problematic, which is the fact that many people in very developed countries think about people in universities as, come on, these people are arrogant. They think they know everything, and they think we are ignorant, but we are not. I mean, what they are saying there is actually wrong. Is wrong, and this has been explored by politicians, important politicians, no names mentioned here, okay? It's this rage of people in the lower class or in the middle class, lower middle class, against these people who have this advantage, which has the advantage of being in a university, of having gone through the university, and they did not have this opportunity. So how do you fight this? I think first you start fighting this in elementary school. I think elementary education should be rich in science, but not science, blackboard science. Science as a game, as a toy, but a toy from which you can learn things.
As a hobby, as you say.
A hobby. Okay, a hobby. So I think this should start in elementary school. It's not science in high school, elementary school, playing with the children. In Brazil, I think schools in the Amazon, in the Cerrado, should have in elementary school science related to that biome. Children should examine the biome, play with that. Okay, and that's the best way. So that's one thing. The other thing is a social thing, okay? Because this kind of problems arise frequently from inequality, okay? And there is strong inequality between countries and within countries as well, okay? And it is this inequality that sometimes conducts poor people to vote on rich people that could be against their own interests, okay? as long as these rich people say bad things about the university people. Because, you see, I'm lucky that I did not go through this trajectory. I could not because it's expensive. My family could not afford. But, no, these people are wrong. So, and this, I think, is a very important factor.
Makes people elevate themselves, I suppose.
Oh, sure. Sure. Now I have this politician that, understands us.
Yeah.
So it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing. And the rage in the past, Second World War, for not just for these scientific things, but for universities, but for other reasons, was terrible and led to authoritarian governments and led to the Second World War. It was one of the factors. So I think, the social part should be taken care of, and inequality is very bad for humanity as a whole. It's bad for people even who are the top of the inequality. The richer people, the rich middle class, or the wealthier middle class. It's bad for everybody.
Are you a bit worried about where things are going?
I'm very worried, very much worried about that. Okay? So I think, about fake news and these attacks on science. So
from both sides.
From both sides. So the best thing is first, having science education in elementary school. Show science as a toy, as a hobby, as something fantastic, amazing. You don't need to invent things. That science does not agree with, to have fun with science. Science is by itself very fun and very interesting. So that's one thing. And the other thing that's not a preoccupation of just scientists, but should be of the whole society, is inequality. And I should say that here in Brazil, if you look at the Gini index, which classifies inequality, or if the Gini index is equal to 1, that means that one person possesses all the wealth in the country.
Okay.
If it's 0, that means that it's equally distributed to everybody. So if you look at the 10 countries with the worst Gini indices, the lowest indices, Brazil is there. Brazil is there. And together with Suriname. These are the two only countries in the Americas that are in this list. The other countries are from Africa. So that's a big problem in Brazil. Okay? And I should say that this inequality measured by the Gini index became worse in the previous governments, and it's getting better in this government. And that should be credited to Lula and the people around him. He considers that a very relevant question to Brazil. Okay? But I think we scientists should also consider that a very important question, not just for humanity questions, for ethical questions, which I think are very important, but also for the sake of science. Because, rage emerges from inequality. And the disagreement with things that come out from universities, from this wealthy middle class, sometimes not so wealthy, I can assure you. These things, for them, if somebody talks against them, these people who are affected by inequality will say, whoa, so, this guy is on our side. So I think that's a dangerous thing in the world today.
Certainly is.
In the world today. So if we could take care of that, that would reduce problems within each country. And I think that would also be not reduce wars completely, because there are other reasons for that, but it will help with wars as well. And with wars, we need to resolve this inequality between countries, actually, which is huge. So,
very big, complex issues, but
yeah.
Incredible perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Luis.
Thank you for joining us for this InterDialogue. You can subscribe to be notified of future episodes and by following us on our social media channels at the InterPlex. Visit our website, interplex.org, for more interdisciplinary and intercultural content, and to join our growing collaborative community.